Yeah,
It was
this is a
big because...
terrible cold opening. I can't use any of this.
Of course you can.
This is a full downer,
You
dude.
don't
This
have
is
to
not
put
a
that
good
bit
way
in.
to...
You can leave off. We'll
Sure.
call it...
There's no good euphemism.
No, there
In
is
fact, it
not.
would be worse to do a
No.
euphemism.
But anyway, they won a lot of awards, but she won.
Sure.
I mean,
Oof.
yes,
Yeah.
heavy
all right.
stuff. Not quite Moana.
No. Not quite Moana. The chicken did not give a very good performance. Welcome to Acceptance Criteria, where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of how software gets made and how we can all do a better job together. My name is Kevin Thomas Euland, and across the chat from me is Andrew Greener. Say hi, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew. We're also here to get deeper on the human elements. I could go on for an eternity about people and how they think about the process of building complex systems, and I can't think of two better people than Kevin and I to get into that.
Which is why we need you to come to be a guest, so it's not just the two of us. If you've got a topic you'd like to come discuss or rant about, drop us a note and we'll see if we can get you on a future episode. You can go to acceptancepod.com/guest and submit your ideas. Also, don't forget you can follow us on most apps. We're at AcceptancePod. We'll post links to show notes and any articles from the blog over there.
We're also building a community on Reddit at Acceptance Criteria, or you can find us on Discord. Once there, you'll find links to show notes and other artifacts you'll find on our blog. We promise to moderate the heck out of anything submitted to the team to keep it a nice little slice of the internet.
On this week's show, we'll be digging into some Reddit questions.
So I'm going to be making notes on my flashy...
What do you need to make notes for?
I don't know, because I bought it, so now I need to use it.
So now you need to use it.
Yeah. I've misplaced some stuff. You need to give me 30 seconds. I don't...
Okay. But before we get to all of that, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. This is a segment we like to call User Stories, where we'll eventually hopefully be answering questions that you, the listeners, send in. But for now, I think we found some interesting questions on Reddit that we can tackle. Schedule Order 66, great username. Story Point Disaster, Agile Newbies at work again. Yeah, sorry, Schedule_Order 66. On Thursday, we had our first real planning session using story points, and it was a complete disaster. Half the team wanted to estimate in hours and convert to points, others were comparing task complexity, and we spent 20 minutes arguing about whether a specific API integration task should be 3 points or 5 points. Nobody even knows what a point actually means. The tech lead keeps saying it's not about time, it's about complexity and risk, but that just makes it more confusing. How is this better than saying this will take about 2 days? Our maintenance tasks are especially hard to estimate this way since they vary so much. I think this is a good example of the problems with Agile and the problems with, we'll just be a self-organizing team that figures everything out. But at the same time, my answer is, as soon as you spend more than 60 seconds, I don't know what the right number of seconds is debating this type of thing, stop, just take one, try it, learn from it, and then repeat that process. Why you guys allow this to spiral into constant frustration, the whole point, and I'm not even a huge Scrum Agile person, as evidenced by 30 episodes of this podcast, the whole point of the framework is to let you guys say, I don't know, it feels like 3 points, let's find out. And if you have bad management who is going to hold you to the 3 points, then tell your management, I mean, that's easier said than done, tell your management they don't understand the framework that they've adopted. But this is the point, is especially if you're new to this, especially if you have a bunch of people trying to transition from waterfall to Agile, you have a bunch of people who haven't had to do it this way before, great, try. Sorry, Yoda, there is try. They're actually, right, like, you should try.
Yeah, again, I like this question because it's one I've asked myself for almost 3 decades now, right? It will be 23 years since I first started hearing about Agile. But no, it's so true. It's like the retro. I always interested when I get to companies that don't do retros, because I'm like, so then what do you do to decide the 2 to 3 little adaptations to your process you're going to make? And
right,
we don't do that because it's like, it's all centralized process. So we all follow the same standard of Agile, and it's like, cool. But there's no retro in any of that. So does that mean I have to go back to the central committee for process changes? Like how long does that take? Like, what's that process? And oftentimes they don't even do that. It's like the next person comes in and runs the PMO or the agile team may
Right.
change some things, but I'm often surprised at that.
If that's what you've agreed to, if you've decided that the central team is the one managing process and we're not allowed to change the process, then shut up. Suck it up, Buttercup. This is the thing you've all agreed to do. And if you think it's bad enough that you need to raise hell, then you guys need to do a better job raising this and providing the evidence and the reasons why it's not working and go up to management. And again, all easier said than done. But one way or another, either you're going to have the influence to fix this and make this better, or you're not. And that's either something you just deal with and stay at this company, or it's time to move on. But like this little middle ground of like, well, the process committee has decided that we can't change this. Cool. Then figure out what the hell 3 points means.
Yeah, I'd actually be. I'm actually wondering if this is like a company trying agile for the first time because it doesn't sound
Right.
very led, does it?
No.
It's like you say, and I've had exactly the same conversation with a few times in my career too, like the time versus complexity.
Right.
Again, bit fluid depending on the types of people. I've worked where complexity just worked, and then I've worked where people could not, for the life of them, not convert that to time.
Right.
Right, and then I'm like, well, then why not just use time? Like,
Right.
it's okay.
Exactly.
You're
Exactly.
recording 8H in Jira or 16H.
Right.
It's just working time then.
Just exactly.
Yeah, but it's like I think that's the advice you have to take is just try something, right? And then become that person on the team who is the cheerleader for let's try it and then we can roll it back, right? And that
Right.
I think the nice thing for us more recently has been that opportunity for Greenfield and new, working with new teams and stuff like that. So we've had that opportunity to be the people saying, hey, let's just try it.
Right.
But that's what you got to do. You got to be brave and say, maybe we're all right. Maybe 50% of this works and 50% of this works. Let's go try it. And then the next time we talk, we'll be more informed because this is analysis. It's not quite analysis paralysis. It's the next. It's like the 3-body problem with analysis paralysis. There's 2 people analyzing, and they're not getting anywhere, right? Like because they're stuck in this sort of triangle of like the point and then the 2 opinions, and it's like what?
Right.
Go with one opinion for a sprint. Go with the next one, or do a hybrid.
Well, and like what terrible culture do you possibly have where the person who is digging in their heels and insisting it's a 3-pointer, like, are you dealing with the person who is the 2-point person? Do they know they're never going to hear the end of it from the 3-point person if the 3-point person turned out to be right? And so like there's a bunch of weird things where your culture might also be impacting this, and you need to beat out of people like, no one's going to be right or wrong. We are going to learn from the thing that we did and do better next time. And also, by the way, do you have scrum masters? Do you have engineering managers? Do you have people who are going to go pay attention to what this does? Are they going to follow the burn down chart? Are they going to look at the velocity report at the end of it? Are they going to actually see and keep track of whether or not your estimate added up to the effort that it took? Or are you all going to just sort of sit there smugly and both the 2-pointer and the 3-pointer think they're both right because it kind of landed somewhere in the middle and you don't get to any resolution because you didn't actually do what was asked of you and figure this kind of stuff out? If you have these problems and you're the scrum or the engineering manager, you have a problem and you need to pay attention to the stats that will help you resolve the problem or solve it by not doing it this way. Like there's so many problems at the root of this story.
Yeah, there's also an interesting there's another side to this that I find interesting, which is what do you do when Raymond's 3 points are not the same as Michael's 3 points, right? Like,
Right,
so now I have
exactly.
a burn down where Raymond is around for 2 weeks and I've got 20 points, but 7 of them are Raymond's, right? And he's going to be done on time, but I can't guarantee that that same 7 is Michael might not.
But in theory, you should know that during sprint planning because of
You
like
do.
all of that goes into the mix of because they're relative points and because this sprint only has 10 stories available and none of them are huge, then all of them end up being relative to one another. That's the real fundamental thing is you guys aren't understand. Like this is why Kanban is a thing that's a lot easier to manage against because what you're doing over time is working with your product owner and your product manager so that all stories are roughly the same size and you eliminate this estimation problem entirely. You just start to get to know during the grooming process that, yeah, we can look at that and we can say that one story is going to take Raymond 1 sprint and Gary 4 sprints, but we know that it's always going to take Raymond 1 sprint and always take Gary 4 sprints. And so we can decide that when we decide who to assign it to, but we've all standardized understanding the scope of the effort being asked of us. And I don't know, this feels like just a fundamental misunderstanding of how to think about effort estimates in general. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess, and this might not be the right way to do it, but I just always done it this way, and I can't find another way in my head to sort it out. But 1-pointer, I'm done the same day. 3-pointer, don't worry about it. It's getting done this sprint. 5-pointer, there could be a point. I might have to split it. 8-pointer, I'm definitely only doing this sprint, and then maybe a couple of
Right.
1-pointers in my spare time. But right or wrong, that's how I've sort of converted my points to time. But I don't want to convert them to real time, and that's where I think a lot of the challenges come in. Where it's like Raymond's 3 points or Raymond's 8 points is one day, and you go into the
Right.
sprint and you're like, Raymond's got 8 points, that's a lot. And it's like, actually, it's complex, but we need Raymond to do it because he's the only one who knows the complexity, but it'll be done really quickly. And that's where I think people get locked up, is like, okay, but if it wasn't Raymond doing it, is it now a 16-pointer because Michael doesn't know anything about
Right.
that? So the complexity is the same, but the person who's doing it, their understanding of it isn't the same. And we don't ever talk about that stuff, right?
No, there's a question coming down later on, which is why we don't talk about that too. And
Yeah.
it's bad. You should want all of your engineers to be able to output reasonably consistently, knowing that there are going to be onboarding windows and all of that kind of stuff, and principals versus seniors.
That what you just brought up is the reason I tell engineers I care about points, by the way, is like, because if Kevin tells me 3 and you tell me 9,
Right. That's a helpful signal for me as your manager.
yeah, but it's good for
Right.
product too, right? Like, you might be misunderstanding this feature.
Right.
Because I walk into a conversation and throughout Ukraine, you're like, but can't we just do this? Oh yeah. And it's like, and it's like, cool, it's solved. That was a 1-pointer, right?
Right.
So it is interesting when you get into the practical day-to-day points.
Yeah, this just sounds like you guys need to start trying things and learning from it, and just, I don't know, there's a bunch of just things that no one actually does agile and scrum, so maybe try doing actual agile and scrum. Actually pay attention to your velocity, actually pay attention to your burn down chart, whether you're Kanban or whatever. There's a bunch of tools available to you to help you all get better and realize, okay, actually no, Sarah was right, it was a 3. You all should have listened to her during grooming and sprint planning. And
no, I want to make sure our listeners get that though, right? Try stuff.
Right.
Change 3 things for a month and see what happens. That is the essence of it, right? Like just try stuff. You are not locked in.
We've worked with so many engineers who are just so, like, have you had bad managers? Have you had bad leadership? Like, I don't understand the aversion to,
I know.
like, the expectation of needing things spelled out explicitly, which is another question that's going to come up later.
That one about points though, sometimes it can be over enthusiasm to adhere to a set of principles that weren't meant to be like adhered to as strictly, right? Where it's like, no, points is complexity. What does that mean? We'll find out, right? Like, it's like, you don't even know. Like, you're trying to be a zealot about this, and it's like, why? Like, just do whatever feels natural for the team, and sometimes it means living and breathing that. So get off the pot, guys, and try to be agile.
All right. Agile-Dragonfruit 517. How do you prevent knowledge silos? Imagine this. It's Monday morning, your payment system needs a critical update, and suddenly you get a message. Your back-end guru who handles all payment things was rushed to the hospital with a serious health condition and will be out. The entire team freezes. No one else knows the deployment process. Customers are waiting. Management is asking questions. And I think I can't say this is what we were just talking about because who knows how we're going to edit the episode, but I think this is where, you should absolutely be doing what you need to do to understand where you have these knowledge silos and starting to adjust that. You absolutely, right now we have a team, well, we have a bunch of teams, but there's one team I think of, there's a guy who spent a year teaching himself everything about one of the really crazy complex backend systems because there used to be more engineers and now there aren't. And it's like, it's great that we now have somebody who knows all of that, but he is still a single point of failure. There is still a concern what happens when he goes on PTO or, knock on wood, something worse happens, right? And so I think, the conversation is, what are the things that you should be doing to address address this proactively. And there's a bunch of comments in the Reddit thread about, pair programming. And I think this is a place where you need to explain those risks to your partners in product and the rest of the business and say, look, the next time we have an opportunity for someone to work on the payment system and Gary's the only person who knows it, it's going to take a little bit longer, but we're going to have Sarah work on the feature and she's going to be able to ask Gary questions. And what might have, again, I can't say that we might have talked about this. Maybe I just have to edit these two blocks together. Maybe Gary's estimate for the story points is a 3 and Sarah's estimate is an 8 because she's still coming up to speed on it. But you should bake in those opportunities to say, yeah, sorry guys, we don't think we're going to be done by the end of the sprint to get this done because we need to get other people other than Gary understanding how this functionality works.
Yeah, and I think EA could own, if you have an enterprise architecture team, they could own what becoming more and more frequent term, the knowledge graph, right? How do
Sure.
you build the knowledge graph? And it already exists. It's just what's the level of maturation, coverage? But it gets really deep too when you think about it from an architecture perspective, because we start to get into like, why do you have one guy that understands something so critical? Like,
Right.
is that
Were there
is
layoffs 3 years
were the
ago and you never
layoffs?
got the budget back to fill the rest of the team back in?
Do you have technical domains where the people who actually really understand payments don't work on it because you've put this into a technical team? Which is why things like data mesh came around, by the way, is like
Mm-hmm.
decentralization, because data engineers started owning data and workflows that they have no idea about, right? Where it's like,
Right.
oh, it works. It's like, cool, yeah, but if it goes down at 2 a.m. tomorrow, it's an outage because that's a credit card feed, right? They're not necessarily thinking about that unless they have the requirements when they're building it. And I think about, like, I look at issues like that where it's like, yeah, why do you have one guy who knows this stuff? So for me, there's like an approach which is at the strategic level, which is like, what are you building over the next few years to change that? So if you
Right.
think about us more recently, solution architects, cross teams,
Yep.
identification of those gaps. So having an enterprise architecture system where you can start to document your architecture and how it connects to other pieces that the guy who left 3 years ago may have known about, but we're all gung ho to turn this thing off because it's burning cash. And then you realize, like, well, actually, it is
Right.
feeding the system that makes $30 million in revenue every quarter, right? It's like,
Right.
you got to understand that. And so I do think enterprise architecture, that is one of our biggest things, is like the audit and the building and then the creation of that knowledge graph. And I think you and I have done a good job over the last few years of like solutions architects, cross teams, like the enterprise architecture repository, like the ideas going from product to a backlog, like a technical backlog. And that's where I see EA and that it's almost like the backlog of all the challenges that you have as a business, and then getting the right people that you've identified as solution architects or enterprise architects or domain architects, business architects. Once you can get transparency on that system and get them into the process, now they start to identify like, why is that thing over there? And so in
Right.
finance, that was really nice because we dealt with the domains first, where it was like, okay, we want to be more business domains than technical domains, and we want the true ownership of to be in that domain. And so we actually started to move people who had the most knowledge of the business processes into domains together, right? So we were
Sure.
able to, and then now you got to do things like pair programming, knowledge graph, and all that kind of stuff. Communities of practice is a term that
Mm.
people might want to check out. Communities of practice recognizes there is a knowledge graph, but you're going to have to build it. So communities of practice is a framework for getting the right people in the room and tackling that. And it can be challenges like this. It's not just technical, like, hey, we need like this single encryption algorithm for everybody to share so we know it's standard. It's also identifying like organizational gaps, right? Like, hey, we don't have a platform architecture, so we're bringing in all this really cool third-party tech, and we know how to use it from an engineering side, but we don't know how to manage it, right? So when it goes down, it's down. We've got an outage.
Right.
So it is, for an enterprise architect, that is what we spend our entire life thinking about, is like holistically, how do I close these gaps on IP?
Well, and every team has to be aware of the impact that that process is going to have, right? So
Yep.
you have to be okay with the next version of this, the next time this feature comes up, it's going to take maybe not twice as long, but it's going to take longer
That
than you would have estimated otherwise because you're going to spend time documenting it, you're going to spend time pair programming it, you're going to spend time filling in those gaps.
that is the essence of enterprise architecture. I love that you brought that up because I often say to, when you're trying to explain to someone what an enterprise architect is, have you ever seen an engineer who's built something really cool? And everybody has, and it's like, cool. Now release that to 20 other development teams.
Right.
And that's where it dies because one, they're really busy doing their day job. And two,
Right.
you have to figure out how to negotiate with 20 different groups the right time to bring them in or not, right? They might have a valid reason for like, we can't do that. That is enterprise architecture. It is the negotiation. And oftentimes, you get not sneaky. I don't want people to think it's sneaky, but it's how do I maximize? So top down buy-in and them just making everybody follow my process is quicker, but that might not be good for the culture, right? Because now enterprise
Right.
architecture is somewhat fulfilling the fear of, oh, they're just going to dictate change to us. It's like, no, we want you to feel like you're part of the change. But that
Right.
is the biggest challenge for an enterprise architect is I got a good idea and now I need to take it to 200 people.
Right.
It's hard.
Well, so whether you call it a knowledge graph, there was a really good comment from Dingbat59s. We used to have a lot of success with a simple skills map, and I really liked a couple of the bullet points in here. List all the skills, knowledge areas, whatever your team needs to deliver. Have all the team members rate their familiarity with each. And so they used a framework of I have no familiarity, I can recognize it 2 out of 3 times, I'm
Yep.
proficient and comfortable, or I could teach it. And then review that, look for the gaps, look for areas where you have single individuals who are who are the only ones who are proficient or can teach it, and then ask for team members to volunteer for the things, and then use that knowledge graph, that skills map, whatever you want to call it. You need to explicitly use that when you're in actual sprint planning and people are volunteering for stories, and you need to make sure Sarah isn't the one always volunteering for payments and Gary isn't the one always volunteering for authentication, and you're actually using that knowledge graph, that skills map, whatever you call it, to make sure that you are spreading that wealth. And that's also a thing that you should then update frequently and go back and realize, okay, great, now it's not just Sarah, it's 2 other people, but we could do better. There's only 2 other people. We're a team of 8. How are we going to continue to expand this? So also make sure that you're updating that knowledge graph with who are taking over, who are these areas of practice, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think there's a bunch of good suggestions in here of just what are the ways that you can start to address this.
Yeah, the skills graph is a good one. The challenge with the skills graph is, and I think only recently have overcome the challenge with the skills graph is that like somebody spends a lot of time, they get in the spreadsheet and they start building the matrix and and then the versioning, right? Like they spend so much energy doing that than actually maintaining it because the
Yeah.
guy with a good idea for the skills graph is also the builder, not the maintainer. Like that is generally like a fairly
Right.
common quote, right? So they have to hand it off to somebody who's going to love and evolve it, right? And I found that only recently having the enterprise architecture tooling allows me to have the skills matrix
Sure.
be generated based on the other meta I'm bringing in, which is like, cool, I've got to assume these guys know Java. They're working on Java microservices, right? And then I can look and say, cool, they're also working on this one, which I assume now they have an idea about the auth. So it's a good place to start. You could do things like accountable, observers, responsible. So you can start to build like a pretty good community around tech, vendors, and concepts. And eventually then your knowledge graph is generated from the meta, right? I think if you do it the other way where you're actually going after skills, you're really only covering what the engineers communicate back to you. And the challenge then too can be human nature kicks in. I've been working on SQL for 8 years, and if I don't say I'm a 10, everyone's going to see that, but I should be a 10 after 8 years. So I
Sure.
often wonder how accurate it is when I come back and I'm like, yeah, you know Snowflake, but you actually don't know all of the new features in Snowflake that are different than a relational database, right? So,
I guess I was thinking of skills more as like what are the actual features and functionality and pipelines and areas
yeah.
of our code that we have coverage on. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
more
yeah.
saying like if no one knows how the payment pipeline works other than Sarah, that's bad actually, and we should make sure the next time a payment pipeline task comes up in sprint planning, it doesn't go to Sarah.
No, but
So
that is
those kinds of
it's a
things.
good point though. You bring it up, right? Is then you have to like if you are the type to have a skills map, there are different levels of that skills map then too, right? Like I think of
Oh,
it as a techie, and you're thinking of it as a product guy, right? Where
right.
yeah, no, that's a fair point too. Like
Yeah.
and again, that's why like if you can commit to the meta, which takes a long time, then the side effect will be to some extent the skills. But then you also then have to commit to documenting the business process flows, right? Because now you have to cover the product roadmap. So yeah, it gets interesting.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things I do like that we have where we work currently is Sprint Zero. So every quarter, they basically you do one less sprint or 2 less sprints, I guess, every year. And by at the end of each quarter, you give 1 week off and call it Sprint Zero, and basically give people time for personal development, different things like hackathons. And one of the things that you get as a result of that is you can say, okay, one of the ceremonies we're going to have during Sprint Zero is a reeval of the skills map, and go through and say, okay, great. During the last quarter, did we do a better job getting more people on payment pipeline tasks than just Sarah? Does anyone else on the team feel like they've changed up from can recognize it 2 out of 3 times to proficient? Like, are those are the kinds of conversations that you can bake into a thing? Because you're right. Otherwise, if it's my job every day to monitor the progress of people on the skills map, I'm not going to do it. That's not a good use of my time. But if I can turn it into something like a quarterly ceremony or something, there's actually a way to make that a habit that's not like a distraction from the 19 other things people need to be doing.
No, agreed. And it's again though, it's like I don't want to constantly sound like I'm hitting on the discipline of software engineering, but
No, it's hard.
if I go to any other industry, not any other industry, if I go to certain industries, like skills are really important to know, right? Like NASA isn't sending shuttles up there. They're not building teams and not
Right.
knowing who they've got
Certifications
on
are
those
things.
teams. They know who the
Right.
astronauts are. They've constructed the crew very carefully. But the people who built the shuttle and the people who were responsible for the flight operations, like all of those guys, I assume it's better than most of the places I've worked in, business.
I don't
But
know. We might do an episode on NASA at some point that's not very glowing at this point,
yeah,
but
but
yeah.
and they still
Yeah.
have accidents, but they to some extent, as much as you can pick on NASA too, like their bad days are after thousands of days of
Sure.
complexity way beyond, like we have a
Right.
bug and we're like, oh, that was a miss. It's like, yeah, but
Right.
everybody died, right? Like we
No,
don't get that.
when you there's a bunch of places, finance, there's healthcare, there's a bunch of places where if you want to be staff engineer 2, it's because you went through a rigorous evaluation process to go from staff engineer 1 to staff engineer 2, right?
Yeah.
That's not really the way a lot of software companies
No,
work. A lot of software companies are like, oh, it's time to reward Gary for his 15
it's a
years. I
feeling.
guess he's right.
It is. It's like that. It's 15 years. It's like they just apply a time and say,
He doesn't want to manage people, so we got to figure out a way to justify the increase in his salary.
yeah. Where's the science in that? It's just one person. And
Yeah.
I raised this recently with a company where they were talking about like, don't be afraid to upgrade your people. And I'm like, the challenge with upgrading your people during economic turbulence is I can get rid of a person. And by the time I get the new rec, it's gone because the business closes it. And so a lot of leaders in companies where the economy is, when the economy is rough is
Mm-hmm.
they will keep people because it's like, well, I'm not even guaranteed to
Right.
get a replacement. And I've read this a
Right.
couple of times with companies where it's like, there are a lot of people just hold on to the body because it's like, well, 75%, I get 75% from this person, but that's better than not getting anybody, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's not. This is when I think about it a lot too, in terms of like companies that hire chief sort of culture officers, right? CIOs should really probably own some of this, right? Like if you have a CIO, a lot of companies don't have a CIO. A lot of companies don't have a chief. What do they call them? They're like culture, organizational.
Operations?
It's like I don't know the different terms for it, but it's like culture officer. They come in and they figure out the culture and the skills
Sure.
and
I'm curious why CIO needs to be involved in that, but okay.
no, because it's just from an information systems. Like I would imagine I would work very closely with the informations officer to talk about that knowledge graph, right? Like what's missing
Sure.
from an organizational perspective. CTO, I'm always thinking is looking external at the sector and the relationships. The CIO, I would always assume I'm working with internally on the information systems and people and
Sure.
stuff like that. But a lot of companies don't differentiate. The CTO owns both of those, right?
Sure.
But revenue and external will always get way more focused than internal.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. All right. Tall status 2540.
No.
Tall underscore status underscore 2540.
I just want to point out tall status 2540. I probably just saved you from getting like ripped apart by
Massive
Kevin and
hate.
I.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Users being a pain. I am the senior product manager of an internal tool, and it mainly caters to an ops team. I have the, by the way, I should say to anybody who works with us that this is not one of us. We work on an internal tool with an ops team. I promise this wasn't one of us. I am the senior product manager of an internal tool, and it mainly caters to an ops team. I have this weekly call with an ops team, and it is the most stressful time of my week. The team continuously keeps asking why their features are not being built, why is there a delay, and always put me on the spot. They threaten me that they will move on to a different tool and openly call out that they are frustrated associated with the product. To be frank, the demands for which the features are being built primarily comes from the leadership, and also there is a demand management team. We have other user types also, and their demands also need to be met. I ensure that critical bugs and product issues get fixed as soon as possible, and minor feature improvements go through, but things do take time. I'm the only one who joins this call from product, and I'm always being cornered. Please advise how I can manage this meeting better so that they don't dominate me completely. And I have so many thoughts on
So
this
do
one.
I, because I was a VP in IT and airlines in the airline space, and man, it's tough. But go ahead. I do want to point out that nobody would think
Yeah.
this was you, Kevin, because you are not tall, are you?
Wow. Wow. I am 5'11. How dare you?
You don't
That's
seem
not
it.
tall. That's
You don't
like
seem it
just
when I stand next to you.
how dare you?
Maybe it's yeah, maybe it's because I only see you in a video box now. I just think of you as being
Right.
like 2 inches high. That's what it is.
That's what it is. So many thoughts. I don't know. So maybe I'll start with if the leadership is defining the roadmap and I guess my first question would be, does leadership appreciate that these ops users are some of your primary users of the internal tool and therefore their input should matter? Which then the question is, are you doing a good job as the product person representing a key stakeholder to leadership? Are you doing your job influencing the roadmap? Now, you may have limited control. It entirely depends on the organization. This might be a large enough company. A crappy product organization may not let this happen. But if you were doing your job, you'd be advocating for these users and trying to make the value of what you could deliver to them impact the roadmap. And so my question is this team not sizable enough, not significant enough users to your internal tool that it justifies the engineering time? Basically, are you quantifying the impact of not helping them? Are they losing time? Are they slower because of it? Like, there's a whole bunch of things that you should be doing to try to influence this leadership driven roadmap. And that's easier said than done. And there's a bunch of organizations where that's not possible. But my very first reaction is it's not great that it's mainly catering to this ops team and that their input isn't influencing the roadmap. That is a failure on a couple of levels. It might not be yours, but it's a failure on a couple of levels. So I would, one, want to figure out that.
Yeah, this.
Two,
Oh, sorry.
oh yeah, go ahead. No. Go
No,
ahead.
no, no. I think I was agreeing with you. I would. Yeah, go ahead. Finish your point, and then I'll
Sure.
sprinkle my pepper.
The other point is in a situation like this where you do have limited control over the roadmap, you do have to make sure you're advocating for giving them some kind of win. It doesn't sound like, I mean, you're saying that I give them bug fixes and critical issues, but are you taking any of their feedback and getting any wins for them? If you can't go and say, hey, I appreciate that this isn't solving the huge big thing, but look at these 3 small ones we at least made better. If you can't give them any wins, then of course they feel like you're not listening to them at all. Again, easier said than done depending on your product org structure, but I'd be looking for those wins. Look for the way to make them at least understand that they're being heard and that some kind of feedback is coming through. You also might be in a tricky situation where you can't blame your leadership. That's a tricky political whatever, but you should be doing what you can to make them feel like you are on their team and that their feedback may be dying above you and in other places, but that it's not on you. But the way you're talking about them coming at you in these meetings make me think your stakeholder relationship management is not going great here, and there's things that you could do to help get them on your side.
Yeah,
And then I just don't love the phrasing of users being a pain. Users being a pain is bad. Users are absolutely a pain, but you thinking of them that way and talking about them that way is just like the most antithetical actual product talk. I don't know. Like, yes, I complain about clients and users all of the time, but you got to be mindful of like, this is words matter. And when you talk about the people who you are underserving as a pain, yeah, man, they have pain. They aren't getting what they need out of this capability, and they're expressing it to you, and maybe they're doing a bad job expressing it to you, but I don't know. Nothing about the framing of this do I like.
yeah, it feels really multidimensional. I've been like, I think
Yeah.
I could say I've been on all sides of this where I've been the internal user not getting what I wanted. I've been the person who
Yep.
I often describe people like this as being marginalized, right? They're sort of,
Yeah.
they're bringing stuff up and they're not getting heard. But I've also been the senior leader on the side where you are getting reamed by external clients and it's actually painful in the beginning, but it's more rewarding because as a senior leader, you can make changes, right? Like you can go to your peers and say, we will never solve this problem, right? Until we do blah. So I've been in all the different sides of this, both internal and external tools. But yeah, I don't understand the bit about I'm the only one who joins the meeting. It sounds like a very odd thing to say because you and I talk about this all the time. Like if somebody's not on a meeting, you go get them, right? You you
Yeah,
you
that
ping them, and if you can't get anybody to join in that moment, you ping the manager of the team. You say, "I can't get anybody to join, and they're asking me questions that needs somebody from your team."
yeah. I'd be turning to my leadership and saying, "Hey, I'm in an impossible position. What is your answer? How are you going to help me solve this? Because I can no longer advocate for them if you're not going to hear me, if the roadmap's not going to get any better. And so all you're doing is putting me in a crappy situation every week. I need support from you as my leader." That's an honest, hard conversation that you should have. And honest, hard conversations are easier said than done. But if you can't have them, I'm not sure I mean, I don't think, I think everybody in any role should be able to do this, but hard conversations are like product 101. You've got to be able to do that. And yeah, you need to ask more from your leaders. You need to ask more from this team. You need to possibly ask more from yourself. Yeah, there's all sides might be a little bit wrong here.
Yeah, and it's tough because I'll give the writer the benefit of the doubt, but if I start to surgically cut all the wording up here, why is there a delay and always puts me on the spot? It's like, do you not share a Jira instance? Do you not know where the tickets are? Can you not join Sprint? Like I don't it just
Yep.
it sounds very compartmentalized, which I'm not used to because I've been
Right.
stuck in Agile for 20 years. And even at the worst Agile, I could generally know where I
I
was
would know
going
what
with
was
this.
blocked and what was, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's like,
Yeah.
oh, he's working on this other project, so none of this is going to move. So now I'm going to escalate because we're just under resourced. I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is to figure out the resourcing across these things. So again, if you surgically carve this up, there's some very odd. So I'll give the
Yeah, this
writer the benefit of the
organization just
doubt.
doesn't seem well designed.
No, not at all. It sounds like
Yeah.
it reminds me of another one we addressed when we were doing an agile episode with the Reddit questions, where it's like, wow, I would love to spend a couple of days in that company because it's got to
Yes.
be really, it's got to be really like, I don't want to say cancer, right? But there's got to be
Toxic.
toxic. Yeah, it's festering.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe get out, maybe leave.
I
Tall
mean,
underscore status, time to go.
yeah, there's some stuff here that's not working, and some of it might be on you, some of it might be on your leadership, but this team, if they have pain and no one's willing to hear about their pain, then something's broken somewhere. Have you quantified their pain for leadership? Has leadership decided to ignore them? In which case, I would be holding my leaders accountable to come and tell them that. I did like 12-24 underscore never forget, which is hilarious. Never forget Jesus's birth. I don't know what 2024 is Christmas Eve, not Christmas Day, I guess. Anyways, their comment was take control of the meeting. Seems like you've created a venue for them to air your grievances. Set a clear agenda for that meeting and make sure there's no room, time for anything else. Which actually I would also agree with in general. All meetings should have an agenda and you shouldn't give them that opportunity. But an agenda could also help structure the feedback and say, let's talk about this one issue that you all have. What is the impact of that issue? What happens if it's not resolved? And if you structured these meetings and let them not turn into just giant complaint parties and actually said, okay, we have 5 things that we're going to talk through each one of them and start to build up the evidence for your leadership, that's also a thing that could help.
Yeah, I actually like the reply, and I hadn't seen it until I looked at the notes. But I was gonna say that there might be an opportunity there too for tall underscore because you can give the air of confidence, right? If you take control of this, because being cornered suggests like I'm going in there and getting smacked around, and I'm not
Yep.
addressing because you should never use the word I got cornered in a meeting, right? Like
Right.
it just sounds bad, like again, toxic. But there's an opportunity
Yep.
to say, hey, we're all in this together. Let me get a couple
Yep.
of you guys. Let's break it down. Let's get a couple of the
Let's get a
guys.
backlog of our issues and
Yep.
yeah.
I think there's an opportunity for that person. And I like the
Yeah.
way Never Forget sort of describes it. Like seems like there's a and I've seen it. I've seen it a lot of times, right? There's you join the meeting and for 30 minutes it's just a session of B session, right? It's like everybody's ragging on people that are not in the meeting and the person's not saying it's not them, but they and
Right.
so they sort of are saying it's them because they're cornered, but they're probably distancing themselves from the because again,
Mm-hmm.
it's the leaders making the decisions apparently. So
Right.
tough one. But
Yep.
if you've got a tough spine, then there's opportunity there. That leaders can you can become a leader through a situation like this.
Yeah. Fully agreed.
And actually, I do like where Never Forget was going because if the meeting's always like that, what are you doing? Like
Seriously.
suggest a better format. Like kill the meeting, rebuild it with the right
Right.
people, and if it's just going through the motions of complaining, then you've got a valid platform to create your own meeting. That's you know
And are you not talking to your own leaders about how terrible this meeting is for you and asking, like, communication in all directions for this person needs to get better?
yeah. Oh, ironically or coincidentally, sorry, the next username just flows right in from the last suggestion, right?
The Lion Messiah? How does the
Yeah,
Lion Messiah
Jesus was a
never
messiah.
forget Jesus?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm still trying to track down 1224 Never Forget. I gotta assume
Yeah,
it
I'm
is.
assuming it's a joke about 9/11 never forget. And so,
Wait a
but
minute. It's
Christmas
not.
Eve,
It's
what
Nakatomi
else is
Plaza.
never forget?
It's Nakatomi Plaza.
Nakatomi Plaza. Oh my
Yeah, it
God.
is.
Yeah, it is. No, no,
It
no, you're
is,
right.
right?
It is. I'm sure it is. All right. The Lion Messiah presented roadmap prioritization to the dev team today. It went over their heads. I tried to explain some really basic stuff. Rice, Gist, Kano, they were uninterested. Rice is actually, do I remember what Rice stands for?
It's it's raise, ice, compression, elevation.
No.
That's what happens when you break your ankle. You gotta do those four things.
Rice is one of it is impact, reach, impact, confidence, and effort. So the Rice framework, right, is reach, impact, confidence, and effort, which is basically how many customers, what's the capability, the impact, the value that it gets, what's your confidence in your effort estimate and your effort estimate. Gist. What is gist? Gist is goals, ideas, steps, and tasks. And what is Kano? Noriaki Kano,
Need not
product
met, need
managers.
fully met, user
There you
satisfaction,
go.
and a bunch of squiggly lines going places.
So basically, trying to explain different options of how you could be prioritizing a roadmap to the engineering team, to a bunch of different models. None of those models should be used together. You should pick one. So we'll get into my feedback for this person. I presented a now, next, later roadmap and explicitly stated this does not correspond with a literal timeline. The next question I got was, okay, but when is next? One of the devs told me that they wanted an exact sequence of the next things that we were going to come to them. I told them that we can tell him what he's working on in the current iteration and what he's probably working on in the next iteration, but not beyond that because we need to be able to respond to customer needs, market trends, etc. He said that this is unclear, makes their jobs harder, and is ultimately bad for the product. I really don't know how to communicate to them that we need to be able to pivot. They just did not understand anything I was saying. And based on how this is described and based on how the engineering team seems to have reacted, I think there's two things happening here. Sounds like it's a fairly waterfall organization trying to adapt and change into becoming more agile. And I would guess that that is a leadership led change that has not been they haven't done the things that you would do to educate is too strong of a word, right? But like you need to get your engineers on board. You need to walk them through what the process looks like. You need to get them to understand why the alleged benefits of agile and all of those kinds of things. I don't think it doesn't sound like anyone sort of did that foundational work. You have a random product person coming in and trying to tell them how things are going to change for them, which depending on your relationship to the engineering team, how long have you been a product person there? Are you the person who came in and suggested that you become agile instead of waterfall? There is probably a bit of a reputational sort of, do they know you? Do they trust you? Why is this product guy telling engineering how to work? Like there's probably a little bit of relationship stuff here that I would guess based on this isn't happening. I don't know. I
It
have
it feels lazy to me. I actually like
yeah.
if you wanna give the reply of I love this username.
Yeah, David underscore Bowie. Bro, why are you talking Rice just etc. to devs? They don't care. Just tell them what they need to do and when it's due to the best of your ability, which I disagree with, but
But I like the first half.
no, I disagree with the first half. I
I
fully
like the
disagree with the
first
first
half
half.
because they shouldn't just be talking. This is because I used to be like this and I got accused of being too academic, right? And I actually, to a
Sure.
certain extent, agree. You can't walk into a room full of guys and girls who are busy deving and just say, hey, here's a couple of frameworks that I either knew or just read about last night.
Correct. Yes.
Nobody's going to go home and be like, let me read gist and do it for you. Let me, oh, rice. It's, come on. Like, and I think David underscore Broey, great
Oh, I
name.
missed that. I missed that. David
Yeah.
underscore Broey.
I
That is good.
think they've just worded it very, very badly, but I think they're basically saying I could interpret it as just tell them what they need to do. And if I give this user a little bit of slack here, I would interpret that as pick one and then
Right.
roll
Yes.
it out with them and actually, as an action, like lead them through and just decide, like one sprint, I'm going to do this with you guys.
Yes.
And we love it or hate it. David underscore Browy doesn't say that, but that's where I think I would have put more information saying,
Sure.
lead them to the water, like get the process
Right.
going, give it a try.
Well, and that's why I feel like there must be something going on here where it's somebody trying to introduce agile to a team that's not agile. And there's absolutely like, there's a. I can understand a product person's instinct to say, I'm going to bring you all along with me on this journey. We're going to find the framework, self organizing teams. We're going to figure out what makes the most sense for us. But depending on the type of company, the type of technology, the type of engineers, there's so many factors that go into this. The better answer might have been like, you and an engineering manager go off and decide you're going to pick Rice versus Gist versus Kano. You all are going to make a choice and come to the team and say, hey, this is the new framework we're going to use. Here's how we're going to prioritize things. Here's how we're going to tell you about things. I will say, even in a framework like this, the engineer's question makes me think they're not ready for agile, which is understandable because agile is bullshit. But the question of, well, why can't you tell me what we're going to work on next? And the product person's bad answer of, we need to be able to respond to customer needs and market trends, those two things, that's not how agile should work or does work. You know pretty well what's going to be coming up 3 sprints from now. You don't know what's going to be coming up 9 months from now, but you should have a pretty good roadmap that is estimated ahead of time. And I think this is where people get stuck in agile, as if like you're estimating and deciding on a Friday what you're going to start working on a Monday. No business operates that way. You have to give people rough roadmaps. You have to give people rough ideas of what's coming up. And yes, there might be a reason why you don't end up actually doing that 2 sprints from now, but I don't know. It's all gray in agile, and this guy's giving black and white answers. I don't like how this product person is talking about this.
I just got visions of us going to the office one day and talking to this person and find out they're working on VB, not even VB.net, but it's like some
Seriously, I
VB
mean,
application.
that is the way the engineers are
Yeah.
talking a little bit, yeah.
I will say this. I have to feed my compliments to you so you can give them back to me. But I will say this is one of my sort of skills is, this is why I kind of like working with you through the years is you have good ideas for product and dev communications, and I'm willing to take that and implement, right? Like it's like, sure, I can
Sure.
do that. So it sounds like sometimes a lot of these questions make me think that they don't have those leaders in the right,
Right.
they don't have enough of the right leaders across the teams to get that sort of symbiotic cycle
Right.
going, right? Where it's like you and I know, like, yeah, Kevin came up with a framework. I'm going to implement that. And then you start
Right.
finding your own little leaders within the domains to say, okay, we're going to try this. Can I trust you with it? You taking a look, you understand it all. So you do need leaders in the right positions, no matter what you're doing. Like
I think that's the problem with this entire agile industry is it's just turned into a factory producing drones who repeat what they read in the 9-hour course they took. You're not going to reshape an enterprise and an engineering team's ability to execute on things after doing a 9-hour course. You need to actually have some experience, know what you're talking about. And yeah, leadership here, this product person, I think a bunch of people don't understand what they're trying to do with the people that they have and going about it poorly.
yeah, and you and I have talked about this in the past, and I think you probably agree that there's a stage of engineering, the engineering life cycle and the product roadmap life cycle, right? Where there's a wrong time and a right time, and then you can really exhaust the conversation around process where it's like,
Right.
and here's the chat, and we're going to talk, and we're going to get product buy-in, and we're going to get this is where the dev team, we're going to get product buy-in, and it's a series of back and forths of this changing of this gigantic diagram that links out to all places. And I think there's a good place for somebody like that who might be coming into a company at the right time to say, wow, you've done nothing to move towards like agile.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to be great for you because I'm going to write the book for you, right?
Right.
Still think there's a better way. You don't write the whole book and then negotiate. You
Yes.
sort of go in baby steps, right?
Right.
But yeah, I feel like some of these places are, oh, Yeah,
Yeah,
bad agile.
it's bad agile. It is bad. There's also a part of agile which is like we have to be adaptive, and when a customer comes and tells us a new thing that we have to be able to respond to it. And it's like, do you actually have that problem? Is that a thing that's actually happened to you in the last year of engineering, or do you want to just change because you read a book that says this is the way that modern companies operate? Do you actually have these problems, or you have this problem and you're looking for an excuse because engineers rightfully hate when you cancel a thing halfway through to change and do what the client wants you to do instead, which is also not agile. The whole point of agile is to allow you to finish what you're currently working on because it should have only taken you 2 weeks, and that way when you pivot there's room to pivot. So it's, I don't know, there's so many red
Well,
flags in
I'm
this
surprised
question.
we haven't made the joke about emojis yet, because that's also part of it, right? It's like, really, that's what you want? You want emojis? You don't want that? You don't want that really useful
Right.
thing that's going to make you more money, but you
Right.
want the emojis. Okay, let's do the
Yep.
emojis then.
Yep. All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this episode of Acceptance Criteria. To read articles that we've written on similar topics to the ones we talk about here, head over to the blog at acceptancepod.com. And a quick reminder, whether this is your first episode or you've been listening for a while, we wouldn't say no to your going and dropping 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and leaving us a nice review. And if you want to leave us a bad review, remember the name of the podcast is My Brother, and Me. Also, tell your friends if you like the show and that they should check it out. Some of the best podcasts out there go by word of mouth, and we'd much appreciate it.
And a friendly reminder that we are always interested in hearing questions directly from you, our listeners, especially for our segment User Stories. If you've got a scenario you'd like help with, whether it's working with a problematic engineer or product team member, trying to navigate the never-ending pitfalls with agile processes, or you just can't understand why your favorite app is evolving away from what drew you to it in the first place, we're here to talk you through it. You can send those questions to acceptancepod@gmail.com or submit them on the Discord in the User Stories channel, and we might be able to help you on a future episode. And we're happy to keep it anonymous so no one can trace it back to you if you end up talking a coworker or something.
For now, I'm Kevin Thomas Euland, and you can find me on most apps at K Thomas Euland. That's ULLAND.
And I'm Andrew Greener, and you can find me on most apps at Criteria Greener. That's GREINER, and this has been Acceptance Criteria. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.